నో నాది ఆఫ్లో ఉండిందండి కనెక్షన్. అది ఆఫ్లోనే ఉందండి మైక్. ఓబిఎస్ ఆఫ్లోనే పెట్టేశాను. ఓబిఎస్లో మైక్.
Good morning, all the participants. The session will commence as scheduled at 10:30. Please listen carefully on the training best practices by the resource person. If you have any doubts, please raise your hand. Please don't disturb in the meeting. Please raise your hand. Session will start by 10:30.
explore the practices which have been in vogue in several organizations. And in this regard, I would like to request our Dr. Anil Kumar Garu. Maybe he will be joining us later to address this webinar. And right now, I would like our principal and also the regional joint director for higher education in East Godavari district, Dr. R. David Kumar Garu, to give his opening remarks for this session. Please.
Very good morning to all the participants to this webinar on criterion-wise best practices for quality enhancement of higher education institutions. So this is our today's the main key topic, and generally we come across all the time we'll speak about best practices. All the time we'll speak everywhere. Whenever we talk something, then we talk about the best practices. So what do you mean by a best practice? And at the same time, a best practice, it should be a practice which should be in a sustainable mode. Even suppose if you initiate one best practice today, this year, even after 3-4 years, it should be sustained. So best practices is your own innovation, and at the same time, if you look at in the NAC point of view, so this main webinar is mainly talking about NAC point of view, and at the same time, once you concentrate on the 7 criteria, everything will come across. We'll come to understand what exactly the best practice means and criterion-wise best practice. Generally, everybody thinks about the best practices is only in the 7th criteria, because institutional values and best practices, right? But that's not correct. So best practices, even from criteria 1 onwards, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 7. So we can discuss. And based on these best practices, you should prepare your SSR in a very systematical way and in a structured way, and then duly constituting certain committees. For example, just one small in this, I will just show you, I will just tell you very small one. If you come to the 3rd criteria, there is a one metric is there, data validation for data metric, quantitative metric. For example, that is seed money. So seed money, how it will be a best practice? Is it a best practice in your institution? Seed money. So the institution is providing seed money to our teachers for doing research or going for seminars or attending some conferences or doing some research. Our students are going for some internships. So are you established that kind of concept in a structured way or not? So that kind of best practice will be discussed. Now I welcome my colleague Sastri Garu. He's so expert in discussing these all best practices criterion wise, and then he will discuss in detail and more or less more a practical point of view. He will discuss all the concepts, all the criterion wise best practices in more practical way, and then I think you really enjoy, and then please make a note of it and then try to implement at your institution. So later stage, Dr. Anil will join, and also he will give you what are the benchmarks for best practices. So maybe at the end of this morning session. So now I'm very much thankful to my IQAC and for giving me this opportunity to address at the inaugural session. And I also thank my IQAC team for come up with this wonderful webinar to all the teachers, the colleges, so that they'll get benefit out of this. So thank you very much for giving this opportunity. I welcome Sastri Garu to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Dr. David Kumar Garu. I take this privilege to welcome you all to Government College Autonomous Rajahmundry, an iconic, historic, and proud institution for the entire state. This is the college established way back in 1853, along with two other colleges in the country, the Presidency College Madras and Government College Kumbakonam. And to tell you just two things about this institution, this is the institution where the President of India worked and chaired the Department of Philosophy, Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan ji. And this is the college where the greatest social reformer, Kandukuri Veerasalingam Pantulu, was heading the Department of Telugu. And this is the institution where the first Chief Minister of the combined state of Andhra Pradesh, Prakasham Pantulu, was a student. And to give you the list, it will be appalling, including the Chief Justices of Supreme Court, the governors, the presidents, and whatnot. So many great people have enriched the name of this college by having had their roots from here. I'm telling all these things because, not that I wanted to say something great about the institution, but the aura of these great people, or the impact, or the footprints left by these great people, continue to guide the institution. Come to this institution, touch the walls, every brick will tell you stories about this institution. All the faculty members, even the non-teaching staff, are really honored to be employed here, and they seek to serve here at least for one academic year to claim proudly that they worked in this prestigious institution. And this is the institution which has been conferred the CPE status and has occupied the bandwidth from 100 to 150 in NIRF, and this institution topped the enlist usage. And there are many things I can quote here. So speaking from this institution, I take this honor to address you all about some of the best practices we have accumulated and successfully projected. You have just heard Dr. David talking about what a best practice is. And he was insisting on sustainability. That is very, very important. The purpose of talking to you about the age-old history of this institution, the 160-year plus, is just to underline the concept that we have been sustaining the values. The practices which I'm going to talk to you about are not those which have been devised or evolved very recently to cater to the NAC requirements. These have always been there, and luckily they have come very handy when it came for NAC assessment. Not only during the first two assessments, but after David's arrival, we have showcase them in a much better light thanks to the efforts he has made in terms of improving the infrastructure, in terms of teaching, learning, in terms of evaluation, in terms of everything. It is like before David and after David. I proudly say this. Now, let me also add to you that I stand at a place of honor because this is the institution which had grudged with NAG, believe it or not. During 2019 March, when we went for assessment, we were given 3.19 and everybody was congratulating us. At a time, this institution was not out and out happy with what we have been awarded. This is not something that we are meekly seeking from somebody. We felt this should be demanded because we had everything that NAC was looking for. In fact, sometimes we feel embarrassed to call this as a college. No, never. This is more than a college. It has long back outgrown the size of a college. With 52 different programs in this UG programs and around 14 PG programs, starting somewhere around 168 years ago, this institution has acquired the status of a mini university long back, be it recognized or unrecognized. This has been a beacon light for many institutions to mold themselves and to imitate the best practices. So when we were not happy with 3.19, we took it as a challenge. And we were prepared even to get scrapped the 3.19 and went afresh for reassessment the very next year in 2020 with successfully the new team has more carefully this time from point to point have evaluated the institution and could not help giving us 3.38. I hope we deserve a clap. And this is the one and only institution in government sector to acquire A+ with 3.38. All this I'm narrating here because it goes to the best practices that we have evolved, that we have showcased, that we have documented, that we have convinced, and finally achieved. Not given, let me say, achieved. Now, generally, when we talk about best practices, we generally think that best practice is something that comes up in 7th criterion. And all the other 6 criteria have nothing to do with best practices. We are just supposed to give only the qualitative and quantitative matrix. And the question of best practice arises only in the 7th criterion. Friends, let me tell you that best practices is something that is all encompassing. It's all pervasive. It covers all the criteria starting from 1st to the 6th. If I ask you, what is a best practice? And where do you actually show your best practice in? It's very, very difficult. If you ask our senior N.T. Rama Rao garu, the ex-chief minister of Andhra Pradesh, what is the best in him? Is it the nose? Is it the height? Is it the voice? Everything. So everything put together has led him to be an excellent personality. That is called excellence. So best practice, locating your best practice in one particular criterion is only for the sake of fulfillment of NAC requirement. They will ask you to mention only 2 best practices as samples. That doesn't mean that you should be self-satisfied with those 2 best practices. Not at all. Wherever the institution is touched, they should be able to find this uniqueness, this best practice. This is something that we should emulate. This is something that we should carry to our institute. Every visit to this temple of learning is an occasion for the devotees to carry something back to their institutions and get motivated and get, reborn. That's what a kind of a renaissance to come to this institution. The very entrance itself will show you what the values that accumulated and preserved and sustained and in effulgence. Right. Now, very quickly, let me talk to you today about best practices. So in today's presentation, I'd like to limit myself to the meaning of best practices, and then I'll also tell you something about how to show these best practices in different criteria, how to identify them, and then what are the challenges, etc. So briefly, I don't believe in introductions. I'm Shastri, Department of English. And key concepts today, we talk about the what, why, and how of the best practices, because I believe that unless you know the very definition of best practice and the scope of best practice, it's very difficult to understand and implement the best practices. And I also try to trace and show with examples. You may forgive me, please, that quite often I quote this institution for the wonderful best practices we have. And when I quote this institution, not because there is a dearth of quoting from the other institutions, many of the people in and around raised their brows how we got A+. And this, I use this occasion as a platform to show you all what we have done and how we have got it. That's why whenever I talk about best practice in any particular criterion, please remember that I'm quoting from this institution, which you can come even today and physically verify. Already several NAC-going institutions have paid visits to this college. And from point to point, whatever we have written in our SSR, every visit of every college team is like a new assessment to us. We have to stand up to their expectations, convince them, show them the records and the practical proofs and everything. So forgive me if I quote my institution for a number of practices that we have evolved, that we have sustained, and that we have showcased. And we also talk at the end, I also talk about, because this is also very important, questions may come regarding QLMs and QNMs and how to answer them and how we have answered. And one important challenge with the best practices is distinctiveness, which is very, very important. Distinctiveness. How to show this distinctiveness? It's really embarrassing. If somebody suddenly asks you, what is your strength? Sometimes you get so embarrassed that you would ask your friends, what is my strength? So what is the distinctiveness of your institution? How to look at distinctiveness? And what is the meaning of distinctiveness and all these things? And I also make a humble request at the outset that those participants who have doubts regarding any particular criterion, I humbly appeal to them, reserve your doubts till the end, so that things can be discussed at length and the track of presentation is not lost. So taking your permission for granted, I'll proceed to the next thing. Criteria 7 has actually 13 metrics and its weightage for 100 marks, be it universities or autonomous colleges or non-autonomous colleges. And there are 11 metrics under values and social responsibilities, and the 12th metric under best practices, and the 13th metric, institutional distinctiveness. The first 11 metrics carry 50 marks on par. There is no distinction between the university, autonomous or non-autonomous. So please remember, no exemptions are granted here. So this gives me an advantage. So because in other criterions, there is a slight distinction, but here, remember, you are judged on par with the university. Maybe not in magnitude, but in terms of practice. So I just wanted to underline how important it is, how difficult it is also to grow to the heights of NAAC's expectations. So there are altogether 7 qualitative and 6 quantitative metrics put together, 13 for 100 marks. Now before that, I straight away go to the definition. What is a best practice? If I ask you, what is a best practice? So best practice has 4 important aspects. It is something that is internally evolved, they say. Doesn't mean that it need not be imitated from somebody. You can even do that, no problem. But you should borrow it from somebody and make it your own. That is very, very important. If you ask me how I evolve my hairstyle, how I evolve my walking style, how I evolve my speaking style, I say I've definitely borrowed from somebody. But I do not want to carry it as somebody's practice, but I want to leave my stamp on that. So we all start learning language as an imitation, no doubt. Any best practice begins as an imitation. You need some motivation from somebody, but the motivation should end with motivation, and by the time you present it to the society, it should be your practice. It is something that you have taken as a seed and developed it into a tree. That is very important. It should have branches, it should be centering many things, and it should be a model for others. And finally, it should carry your emblem. So internally evolved in the sense, it need not be completely yours, but it should carry your emblem. That is very, very important. And second thing, best practice is not something that you find anywhere, anything. No, it should be relevant within the context. What is the context we are talking about? It is the context of higher education. It is the context of an academic institution. And it is the context of values. So any best practice that we have evolved, that we have borrowed and developed and finally made it our own, should have relevance. What is the fun if you cultivate something, for example, a beautiful voice? All the children in this institution can sing songs. So in what sense is it relevant to higher education? But if you can cultivate something like punctuality, something like good personality, or something like good character, that has more relevance. So what I mean to say is, the best practice should have relevance within the context of higher education. And once it has the relevance, automatically it has a positive impact on the functioning of the institution. Definitely. If you take our institution, the functioning of this institution every day begins at 10 o'clock with Vande Mataram and ends at 5 o'clock with Jana Gana Mana. Don't you agree that standing alert for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, be it on the way to college or once you enter the premises, be it in the classroom, if you stand up for a couple of minutes and show respect towards the national songs, will it not have a positive impact on your functioning throughout the day? After all, a small romantic song that you listen to in the morning will carry its melody throughout the day and make your day happy. So why not this practice? This is also a small example I'd like to give you for a best practice having a positive impact on the functioning of the institution. Definitely. It can be even a no vehicle day, which has a positive impact on the institution. It can be, conduct of seminars, workshops at a higher level. So anything should have relevance and impact. And finally, I'd like to tell you, there are several best practices which we have been following by order. So NAC does not accept it as a best practice. Anything that is imposed upon by CCE or by the state government or by the central government, anything that comes as an order and implemented in the institution for the well-being of the students cannot be accepted as a best practice. It is being scrupulously followed because there is no other goal. So from this you can understand that best practice is something that is voluntary. That is very, very important. It's not imposed upon from above. It is something that we have evolved out of our own passion, out of our own desire, out of our own concern for the students, out of our own, the inner struggle to give something to this institution, just as what all you do to make your baby in the cradle look pretty. How many things will make the baby pretty? So you add everything and still you're not happy. You may ask me a question, so how many best practices make the institution really great? I wonder. It's not one, not two. It's not a job in one day. I tell you, this is an infinite practice. It goes on unending, ad infinitum. So what is a best practice? I think I have given you a fair picture. It is something that is evolved and relevant and positive and unprescribed by authority from above. And why should we have a best practice? Everything is going smoothly. The institutions run smoothly. The syllabi is done smoothly. Exams are conducted smoothly. Degrees are being given smoothly. Then do we require a best practice as such? Friends, let me tell you, these are the advantages of adopting a best practice. A best practice enhances the excellence of the institution. I can only quote you one example. This institution, the best example for the excellence of this institution is not even very recently during the online admissions. Even earlier also, this institution has a demand of 1:9 applications. For every seat in any group has a competition from 9 others seeking that particular seat. So this is an example for the excellence of the institution. Excellence is not something that we advertise in newspapers. It's not something that your radios and TVs talk about, shouting day in and day out, topper, first rank, second rank, we see this. Have you ever seen any advertisement of this institution? Never. Excellence is something that is recognized. That is by word of the mouth that spreads. That is by the curriculum that you design, by the implementation that you design, by the activities that you conduct. These are the examples. These are the ambassadors of excellence. So best practices are those which enhance institutional excellence. And if you go to the slide a little earlier, I told you it should have relevance. I told you this is the meaning of relevance. Relevance is it should enhance the institutional excellence and should confer commendable value to the institution and stakeholders. Quite often during parent-teacher meeting, student-parent meeting, generally they say, sir, we are really proud of admitting our child to this institution because this is the institution where I studied, my father studied, my grandfather studied. So you can understand what a proud thing it is. Just as we say, I visited Germany, I visited Japan, etc. People say, we have been graduated from this institution. Very recently, a professor from Harvard University happened to visit this college and he visited the room where he was sitting and touched the bench and saluted the chair and said, this is the chair that has taught me the basics which now stand me as a professor at Harvard. So this is commendable value to the institution. And even the stakeholders, the teachers or the students or the parents, these are the stakeholders who should actually feel proud from the best practices that we actually implement. And best practices is nothing but exploring new areas for self-improvement. You may ask me, sir, should we every time borrow a best practice from outside? Not at all, no need. If you're really motivated, that's what the reason I told you. Visit this institution, you carry something. Even without institution also. Just like our personalities also. Sometimes we have role models to look at and then emulate. Sometimes we introspect. If you take Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, he was always busy introspecting into himself. That is called self-exploration for new areas for self-improvement. So what are my strengths? What am just like this institution is SPDD. Okay, strategic planning and deployment documents. This is nothing but a kind of SWOT analysis. So if you can make a SWOT analysis of yourself, very recently, I've set a question paper for personality development where SWOT was a topic. And one of the questions I gave was, conduct a SWOT on yourself and explain to me how you're planning to overcome your weaknesses. The same question applies to us also as institutions. If you can explore into your own weaknesses and how best you can, make good of them, and that there arises what is called best practice. And if you ask me the other way of explaining the best practice is reduce the gap between our practice and the toppers' practices. Why do we talk about Presidency College, Madras? Why do we talk about Lady Sri Ram's College? Why do we talk about Christ College? All these things are institutions of excellence because they have unique practices. And if you can really follow them, the distinction between those institutions and your institution gets slowly erased. If the distinction is erased, then you stand shoulder to shoulder with them. So that is the advantage of adopting a best practice. And ultimately, let me tell you, the best practice is excellence. What is excellence? We have been talking so much about excellence, sir. And in the first point, you said best practices enhance institutional excellence. Excellence is nothing but the all-round health of the institution, the wholesome development of the institution. So the aggregate best practices in different areas come to be known as institutional excellence. It's not in one thing. That's what I was talking about. When you talk about a particular film actor, you look at the all-round personality, the various things. Similarly, so in all the 6 criteria, that's what I've been every time underlining. Best practice is not something that tops up in the 7th criteria. It is something that has to figure out every criterion, and then only it leads to excellence. That's very, very important. Now, best practices can be, so where can we, apart from these things, can we locate best practices anywhere else? Yes, you can. They can be academic in the sense from 1st to 6th criteria. It can be administrative also. In office practices also, you can look at your best practices. In the sense, if you have a time-bound schedule for, for serving your students, if your people serve with a smile, really, if you come to this institution, very recently I've seen the students at scholarship being facilitated by a team of senior students who was helping them fill in the online things. And very recently we have seen online admissions where a group of student volunteers have come forward to guide the students. And this institution, 10 days before the commencement of the online classes, online admissions, has arranged teams of faculty to sensitize the students about the new programs in this institution and the employment opportunities. And we have actually developed a video talk by each head of the department about the various programs being offered by the department and the career opportunities and what the students are expected to bring with them to join this particular program, etc. So these are some of the practices which are very, very unique, which look to be very simple. And I don't say that these are unique ideas. We all have them, but very few of us materialize them. There lies our principle, David's motivation. Ideas which remain as ideas should first be shut off the laziness. If you can begin doing it, of course, it demands some efforts, but and some resources. If you can allocate them and do that, I'm very sure this turns out to be a unique best practice. And it can also be organizational best practices. So entire institution, in the maintenance of the institution. When I visited Infosys campus, I was asked on the last day to talk about it. And I said, this is the institution where I've seen a beautiful garden where every tree, before shedding its yellow leaf, is taking permission from the management. Shall I do it on the ground? Because the tree respects the kind of, cleanliness being maintained. And 2 days before the leaf is ready to drop, there are people standing with their baskets to take the leaf. So this is the kind of maintenance is very, very important. The very moment you step into it, you cannot do it. You cannot go otherwise. You are being regulated. You are being conditioned by the maintenance of the institution. They speak. The floor speaks. The room speak. The neatness speak. The punctuality speaks. So everything. And the upkeeping of things, the way, just visit our labs. And I've seen many, very recently our principal was talking about his, as RJDCE, he was visiting a particular college somewhere in Srikakulam where he had to dust off the table with the help of an attender to seat himself to place his books upon. So the way you keep our records, the way you keep our furniture, our infrastructure, and then more important is dealing with people and money, accounting for it, and making the little while stay comfortable. Many a time, not only the students, we have parents visiting, we have officials visiting this institution, we have police officials, we have officials from the legal law department. People come to this institution and their little while stay is a beautiful, memorable experience. That's how we try to keep up things. Of course, it involves a lot of maintenance, a lot of people, a lot of resources, but unless you do that, it's not possible to claim a particular best practice. I told you, to showcase a best practice before NAC team, it might be easier, but to sustain it. We've completed our NAC 1 year ago, but even today, you see it ready for assessment even tomorrow. That is how the sustenance should be maintained. And best practices should combine so many things. The word best practice is like a thread that goes through the flowers and makes it into a garland. So when you are devising a particular best practice, apart from keeping those things, best practices come from the institutional goals. Every institution has a vision, a mission, and its qualities. These things are very, very important, and we should maintain that. So institutional goals and learners' goals, we have program objectives, we have course objectives, etc. These are the goals. When the learner leaves this institution, what is it that we expect the learners to carry with him or her to the employer and to the community and to his family, to himself? Not only in terms of the core subjects or the languages, but the behavioral aspects. These things should also be taken into account when you are designing the best practice. At the same time, you should not ignore the policies of the state and center, periodically changing from time to time. And do not lose sight of the career, be it higher education or be it employment. 80% of our students in government colleges usually, immediately after graduation, go for employment, preferably in private sectors. How much can you enable them for a career? be it employment or education. These are the two broad areas, or even entrepreneurship, right? They can be an employer. That's also a possibility. So how are you trying to shape them? How are you trying to train them? How are you trying to equip them? These things also. The best practices should bridge these things, should connect these things. And as usual, national development or regional development, what you call, so far we have heard about corporate social responsibility. We call them CSR. But this institution believes in ISR, institutional social responsibility. So what we call national development is not going somewhere to Delhi and doing something. National development is possible if every institution within her or its own region starts working towards development. It leads to national development. And finally, today we are all talking about values, be it social values or spiritual values or cultural values, etc. And the institution believes in this. I can only give you one sample example. I don't know how many degree colleges within the state have the Department of Finance. We have it. This Department of Finance offers students a number of courses in music, song, dance, traditional, modern, and even tribal. We are not spared anything. We are trying to bridge. At the same time, in this institution, we have invited great spiritual leaders from Ramakrishna Much. We take assistance from Ramakrishna Much. We take assistance from local spiritual organizations, right? So from ISKCON, etc. And we may even and on many occasions, we invited great pastors to sensitize our students about the need for spiritual values. And even social values also, especially regarding respecting girls, respecting or coexisting with people of different sentiments, different religions, different beliefs, faiths. This is the diversity of our country, and preparing our students for the diversity is also one of the aspects of best practices. So I think I'm successfully showing you the entire scope of best practice. This is very important. We said best practice, best practice, best practice. But what is a best practice? What is the scope of a best practice? What should best practice accommodate within? The encompassing area, the wide perspective of the best practice I'm trying to show you today. Maybe at length, my principal should permit me, because unless I lay the foundation here, whatever I'm going to talk to you about in the ensuing program may not be convincing. And ultimately, best practices should cater to creativity and innovation. This is very, very important. Gone are the days when teacher was a knowledge giver. We are no longer knowledge givers. We are facilitators. So we should make the child come to the forefront. So self-learning is the watchword today. So creativity is very important. So we are talking about creativity. That's why this institution has long back, much before NAC, has started Center for Innovation, Incubation and Entrepreneurship, where students who have innovative ideas convert them into projects, and with the help of the teachers, and bring them to the faculty, and we will discuss that idea and take it to the entrepreneurs outside if there is a possibility for commercializing it, or I should say for selling it to the community. This is also important. So innovation is no one's personal property. So that's very, very important. It comes out of incubation. So that's why creativity is very important. Creativity is there, like water is there under the ground. The only thing is, how are you rigging the water out? Is it 20 feet down or 100 feet down or 150 feet down? Doesn't matter, but you will definitely get it. At least 50% of our students are not bereft of creativity. The only thing is, we have to locate it, we have to nurture it, and we have to provide the necessary environment in which a child will definitely come up with new things, right? So the second thing is quality management strategies also are very important. It's not only the headache of the IQAC. Quality management is very, very important. And lecturers of commerce can talk about it. Quality is not a one-time effort. Quality management is very important. If you can manage that quality, you need no advertisements. When we talk about Philips, we don't find any advertisements today, but people are crazy. When there was a time when Nokia was ruling the market of the mobile phones. So why I'm saying all this is quality management strategies. Quality is in teaching learning, quality in research, quality in all the 6 criteria, whatever you call, and how can we manage it? That's very, very important. So does it require workshops? Does it require seminars? Does it require training? Does it require a kind of orientation or a refresher course? Or does it require hands-on experience like a workshop? If these things are not periodically conducted, quality will become only a one-time word. But quality is not a one-time occasion. Quality is quality only when it is sustained, right? And second thing is best practices are not mere headache of the institution. Best practices should be supported by the stakeholders. Means unless you make the student a part of the best practice, the student feels that he is no way concerned. There are people to look after the best practices. Why should I bother? Right? For instance, plantation is a periodical affair in this college. In every college for that matter. But if you make students responsible for the for the sapling which he has planted, or entrust a group of people to select saplings, then he feels a sense of responsibility. That's what we have seen here in this college. Every day, the students come up 10 minutes, 20 minutes before and sit around the particular saplings that they have planted, and they try to prune them, they try to water them, and they try to enjoy the new leaves that grow upon them. So best practice is something like a collaboration. It's not something that one man does, or it's not something that an outsourced agency can give this institution. So best practice is something that we evolve with the collaboration of our parents, of our students, of our community, of our industry also. In this institution, we have the alumni who maintain a certain portion of the garden, the greenery in the college. They periodically come and attend. They have appointed people to look after that research. And any best practice should also cater to global competency. That's also very important. Today, our students are going to be global citizens. So, along with national development, along with regional development, we should also look after the global competencies. So, tomorrow when our children enter the global scenario, what are the skills that are expected? So what is the kind of personality that students should carry, and what kind of attitude they should carry? All these things should also be trained at the degree level, because remember, students at the degree level are the final products, almost finished products. So we have to see to it that we are finishing them, giving good finishing to the product. Whatever goes inside is different, but ultimately they are sold only when you give them a good finishing touch. That is important. And use of technology. Technology is the feel and breath of nowadays, isn't it? So a student who is technically illiterate is almost an illiterate, in spite of having his graduate certificates and all that. And that's the reason today, even BA students are not left without computers. There was a time when we talked about computers, we thought it was only the job of the science graduates. But today, even commerce graduates, even BA graduates have to do something with technology. So the basic C languages, C++ and Java, or even whatever other languages that are needed, basic languages and basic, MS Office, etc., is our opening ability to open the mails and send mails. This is very, very important. So technology supported education, technology empowered education will become a true education today. And if you can do that, it leads to good citizenry. A good citizenry is a responsible citizen, a citizen with moral values, a citizen with social consciousness, etc. And if we can do that, that becomes the best practice. I think I have given you the wonderful idea about what best practices are. So you are saying so much about best practices, very nice. But even then we have a problem in identifying them. Yeah, definitely. Even there, I have a few things to give you. So there are five stages in best practices. If you could look at the slide, the first one is, what is a best practice? Where can a best practice be implemented? That is identification. The second thing is, once you identify, like diagnosing the problem in the patient, and after that, implementation is medication, right? So how to implement whatever I have, yeah, this is the wrong with the institution, and this should be done, good. And then how to implement it? Do we have a strategy? Okay, we implement it. Is it a one-time implementation? There are certain medicines like diabetes where you have to continually use it. That's very, very important. One time using it and then bringing the sugar levels to zero does not solve the problem. So any best practice should be institutionalized. That's very, very important. That's what our David often tells us. Institutionalizing. Today there may be a good principal who is a dictator or who's a commander who tries to enforce it upon them. Good. But once he leaves it, people feel relieved and forget about it. That's what we see in many institutions which once upon a time rose very high, today have fallen flat because the institutions rose with the principles and fell with the principles again. So best practice should be institutionalized in the sense it should not be completely the property, it should not be owned by individuals. It should be institutionalized and internalized. Some other thing. Internalization is an unconscious implementation. That is also. Internalization comes with institutionalization. So many practices, even after institutionalization, may get relapsed, people get relaxed and forget about it. But internalization is something that is digested into it, something that is internalized, something that you cannot help doing. In the morning yesterday, I was watching, when the national anthem was sung, even the dogs sleeping on the campus got up and started singing along with it. I wondered what made them actually do that. So internalization is something that is unconscious. So I see many students here. While this college has around 200 yards from the main gate into the college. So while coming also, as soon as the national song is played, they become standstill and they become silent to the surprise of many passers-by. This is something internalized. And I have never seen any faculty member telling the students, you should stand like this. Never. Even the first years have learned it from the seniors. The uniforms, everything, the respect towards girl students, everything is internalized. Like the values of our family which we carry. The institutional values are better known when they are carried by the students. And the last and the most important thing is dissemination. Dissemination is spreading. What is the use of the fragrance of a flower unless it is disseminated in all directions? The purpose of fragrance is to be smelt. The greatness of an institution should be, extended to as many neighbors as possible, and it should shelter as many other people as possible, and that is dissemination. And one by one, quickly, let us see. The first one is how to identify the best practice. So when you are identifying your best practice, remember what are the goals of the institution? What are the pedagogic requirements of this institution? As we talked about global concerns and local context. And what is the nature of our learners? Does the best practice that we have selected suit our learners' natures? And what is the competence of our staff? Many best practices which have been implemented in this institution over the last 3 years demanded a lot of competency on the part of the teaching staff. When Google Classroom was introduced, many people did not know what it was. And even today, thanks to Corona, I should say, online classes has become a buzzword. And many teachers, be it in private institutions or government institutions, are now learning the online tools, how to bring YouTube into the classroom. So all these things they have been made mandatory due to the online classes. Though they were known earlier, very few people really bothered about them. And infrastructure is also very important. So are there any best practices that pertain to infrastructure? The maintenance of infrastructure, all this is important, very, very, very important. Most of the colleges complain that their infrastructure is being destroyed by their own, students. So how to fix a responsibility? How to make the students own the infrastructure? That's not so. Today, infrastructure costs a lot. Institution means infrastructure today, apart from the students. The rating of the institution depends upon the kind of infrastructure that we have. And even governance, all these things, the policy documents that we have, the SOPs that we have, all these things, the code of conduct that we have. So that, because these things are very, very important before you take any action against anyone. So all these things, do we have any lacunae in these aspects? And if you can really devise a best practice which can link all these things or which can make better any of these, then that is the best way of identifying your best practice. Whether our best practice is matching these things, that is important. So best practice, as I told you, is a thread that runs through all these requirements and makes it into a beautiful garland. And implementation, as I told you, okay, so we found out the best practice. Can we go ahead with it? No, before you go ahead with it, you should think about the practicalities of it. So you should plan how to implement this. Shall we implement it during weekends, twice a week, every day, every hour, once a year? What is the planning for it? And what are the resources, the people, the materials, the men and materials that we have? And does it actually build the capacities of this institution or the students or the faculty? Okay, and the fourth important thing is best practice should be periodically monitored. That is very, very important. Anything that is implemented without being monitored will naturally go away, go beyond control, and sometimes fails to yield the fruits it was meant for. So after monitoring, wherever you come across any discrepancy with the intention with which it was introduced, then evaluation will help you to make right wherever it went beyond or behind what it was planned for. So planning and resources, capacity building along with monitoring and evaluation are the 5 steps that are very important during the implementation of the best practice. And when you are implementing, there are certain challenges. The challenge is, as I told you, many of the best practices that we talk about, friends, people say we know it already. But what he says here is action is more important, not contemplation. We are all good at contemplating, but we are very poor actors. So we don't act upon it. Therefore, the implementation phase. So performance is more important. Performance is more important than promises. And let there be no place for cynicism. Cynicism is doubting. Maybe it may turn out like this. Maybe it may not yield the fruit. Maybe it may boomerang. So we go on thinking, the negative sides of it. Of course, you should also think about, but that should not deter you from going ahead where it is needed. And most of the limitations for the implementation of any best practice are imaginary. That's what the NAC people themselves have said. We imagine things to be more difficult. As once I read it, the pangs of death are more horrible than death itself. So to think about certain things is more horrible than to experience it. Once it comes into experience, automatically we all pass through it. But if you start thinking about it, it looks more than what it really experiences. So I'd like to quote Gandhiji's quotation here. Before you go for a change, First, start the change with yourself, he says. We must be the change that we wish to see. Rather than trying to see the change outside you, start the change within you, and that is best practice. The best practice is something that you should start with yourself, and the entire institution, the entire locality, the entire state and country will definitely feel its impact. Then we are talking about institutionalization. So what is institutionalization? I think I talked enough about it. Institutionalization is becoming an integral part, and if it is individually managed, there is a risk of disruption or half-hearted implementation. A particular policy implemented by a particular head of institution or a particular head of the government may be weakened by others. We have seen many policies of governments which have been very enthusiastically implemented by one government have been completely dropped by the other government because they were least interested in it. That means they were not institutionalized. So sustainability was missing there. Continuance is missing there. So the best solution for a practice to run on its own is institutionalization. And internalization, institutionalization and internalization are different. That's why he says, we are what we repeatedly do, is a quotation actually. We are what we repeatedly do means that becomes yourself ultimately. That becomes yourself. So it's not anything that starts as an imitation in the beginning, finally becomes your true nature. So as Gobel said, even a lie repeated 1,000 times becomes more powerful than truth. So internalization is something that is consciously imitated in the beginning, but becomes an unconscious part of your practice in your course. It should be ingrained or assimilated in your personality. That's why I told you, first it starts as a habit, then it becomes your nature, and finally turns out into your character. That is very, very important. All the characteristics that we have today, whether virtues or vices, they have started as habits, and finally they have become our nature, and they have turned out into our character. And so internalization is nothing but attitude formation. So the institutions also have attitude. Don't say attitude is something that individuals have. So how can institutions have? Even institutions will also carry attitude. So the aggregate internalized best practices become the ethos or tradition or excellence, what we call ethos. That is very, very important. When we talk about IITs, they carry a tradition. They carry an ethos. Ethos is nothing but a kind of philosophy that is invariably associated with those institutions. That is very, very important. So when we talk about Sabarmati Ashram, or when we talk about Tagore's Shantiniketan, they carry the ethos, the tradition that they have planted long back, intact, they have been preserved. That is the sanctity of the best practice. And finally, dissemination, as I told you, is nothing but, it's not self-containing a best practice. When we were children, when we went to tuitions, when teachers provided us with the material, we tried to preserve it for ourselves, lest someone else should borrow it and get equal marks with us. So best practice is not something that you should secretly develop and then keep up. It's not something that is copyrighted. Okay, it is something that is meant for dissemination. Dissemination is diffusion. So wider application is very, very important. Because this best practice is for the society, is for the community, is for the nation, not for your institution alone. Therefore, others should also emulate it. So provide them a chance. Give it as much publicity as possible. So canvas it on feasibility and adaptability. That is the problem. When we talk about a great man, people say, sir, he was born great. How can we become? No, you can also become. No one is born great. People have been, strenuously working to become great. No institution is born great. They have strenuously worked across years to acquire the position of, unchangeable position today. So we benefit from each other's experience, remember. If you are standing at a point of excellence today, remember you have been nurtured to this height by several other institutions earlier, and all the best practices that you have are not those that you have devised, that you might have borrowed from somebody, and made them your own. So another important point is, before you disseminate anything, database is very important. Mere advertisement, mere talking about is not enough. You should show them your documentation. The database, the IQAC usually, or the academic cell usually maintains the database of everything. Talk about the research work, or talk about your results, or talk about your seminars and workshops. And the database is very important. Today, even NAC looks for database before they believe your claims. So though we have QLMs, the QLMs should be sufficiently supported by quantitative matrix, which is nothing but a computerized and non-personal, completely neutral assessment of an institution without any personal prejudices. So database is important, and periodically you should conduct reviews, and the record of success should also be shown, and IQAC plays a vital role in this aspect. Now we are coming to the next point: how to devise best practices in different criteria. This is what I've been trying to tell you right from the morning at 10:30. I was telling you, best practice is not something that turns up in criteria 7. Best practice is something that you should be able to locate in every criterion. That is very important. Now, let's take the first criterion, namely the curricular aspects. Now, in curricular aspects, what are the best practices and how can we implement them? Friends, remember, maybe in the coming 2-3 slides, I'll talk about the best practices, but at the end of this particular criterion, I'm trying to give you an overall opportunity, the coverage, the overall perspective of best practices in that particular criterion. So look, for example, integrating ancient values is an aspect of curriculum. Today, curriculum talks little about these things, but if you take the initiative and if you can do that, it's really great. And when it comes to the Government College Autonomous Rajahmundry, you may ask me, so how did you integrate ancient values in this institution? Believe me, this institution has got a certificate course in yoga. Don't you agree that it is a part of integrating the ancient values? The whole country today is talking about yoga as a unique Indian copyright. And why not this institution? And this is very important for the student, not only in his personal life, even in his professional career also. So we have introduced what is called yoga as a certificate course here. And apart from that, we have a Gandhi Study Center. And Gandhi Study Center, Gandhian economics and Gandhian values today, though we claim them, are not being actually catered to. This is a kind of ancient value which we have dusted off and we are using it, and we have started a separate Gandhi Study Center in this college. And to create the value of ancient, the ancient value, we have created gurukuls in the institution, like small round huts where they're almost like classrooms, where teachers with a limited number of 20-25 students come under the trees and start teaching lessons to them, as against the conventional the iron and steel four-walled classrooms. We have Gurukul system sometimes just to give the students an experience of learning from nature. And as I told you, we have Janganamana and Vande Mataram as usual. And to promote Ayurveda, which is also on extinction today, the Department of Botany is maintaining a garden called what we call the rare medicinal plants. And here also, another best practice is we have made use of the knowledge of the students coming from tribal areas. Luckily, Rajahmundry is situated just 20-25 kilometers away and to the agency areas. And around 25 to 30% of our students come from agency background. And these people know a lot of medicinal plants, and they know a lot of medicine men within their areas. And with the help of those students, we were able to get certain rare plants and started cultivating them in front of the Department of Botany. You can come and you can verify. The NAC people have checked it. So you may ask, sir, what is ancient values? This is what I'm going to tell you. This is how we have devised the The word ancient values, maybe suddenly when I said, sorry, ancient values means Vedic values, this and that, or Aryan values, this and that. No need. Look at your own strengths. Look at your own areas. Look at your own college. How best can we preserve the ancient values? That is very, very important. And we have vermicompost. So we are integrating the ancient values. We have a compost unit because this is such a big college with more than 20 acres of land, and we find a lot of solid waste like paper, like leaves, dry leaves, etc. And we have a compost unit. So this is a traditional value of developing our own fertilizer instead of depending upon these chemical fertilizers, organic fertilizers. And we have Department of Fine Arts, as I told you, which is a proud possession of this college. The Department of Fine Arts has preserved the ancient values by running certificate courses in Carnatic music. We have a local college called it's Adi Shankara College of Music, and we have a tie-up with the institution where teachers from the institution come and teach our students who are genuinely interested. This is one way of promoting ancient value, the ancient dance, ancient music, like Kuchipudi, which is a rare possession of Andhras. Now we are now offering them as certificate courses to our students. So are you not convinced that this institution is preserving or integrating, I should say, not even preserving, integrating with the modern curriculum? This curriculum which has been implemented, which has been prescribed by the, by the government or by what we call choice-based CBCS, etc. We always try to enrich the curriculum not merely in terms of additional input. The additional input should also promote what we call ancient values. I think very proudly I can say ancient values are wonderfully taken care of by this institution. So that is what I wanted to tell you. So we have vocal music, we have instrumental music, we have certain instruments also purchased in the department, and it's being looked after by a faculty member who is himself a dedicated artist, apart from being a teacher. So this is how we integrate in curricular aspects. If you can really want to show it as one of your best practices, you can develop it. And you can make it as a mandatory course for some of the students. We have made certificate course mandatory for all the first year students. So like that, how ancient values can be, can be rebuilt in this college. Then provide study come work experience. That is also very, very important. Thanks to the state government today, this year onwards, as part of CBCS, we have internships made compulsory. But much before this concept was implemented, we have what is called the finishing school training, where the students in the last year, in the last semester, for a period of for 2 months, are being trained in employment scenario. And we have internships in the Department of Commerce, in the Department of Botany, in the Department of Physics, and in biotechnology, where we send our students for a couple of months to industry. Many of our students from the zoology department, especially from the aqua department, have attended the industry called, we have Avanti Feeds, I think. Avanti Feeds, which is specialized in developing aqua feeds. These students have gone there, worked with those people, understood what are the ingredients of the aqua foods and all these things. And many BBA students who have been selected based on an internal test conducted by them have visited out of state. They went there, they've gone there, and they've spent their time there and returned 2 months after with lots of experiences. Not only experience with working out of state, experience with the industry, experience with the workers, experience with the workplace experience. It's a hands-on experience. So if you can make internship a compulsory program, but nowadays I think you cannot do it, because I told you best practice is not something that comes from above. Now that the government of Andhra Pradesh has made it compulsory that all the courses should have invariably internships, you cannot claim it. But this point we prepared when we were going for NAC before this government has made internship compulsory for all the graduate courses. And student exchange program, this is an optional program, but how many of you really have it? At least at the local level, we have so many degree colleges, but do we really have it? But this institution has been using this opportunity. We have, Rajahmundry is a hub of education. We have several engineering colleges, degree colleges, men's colleges, women's colleges, training centers, educational colleges, medical colleges, etc. And some of our science graduates and arts graduates are exchanged with the students of another aided institution called Kandukuri Rajalakshmi Women's College. And we have other institutions also. We are now thinking to extend the student exchange program to other states, if possible, to other countries also. We have tie-ups ready, we have MOUs ready. The only thing is we are looking for the approval from the parents, physically and financially and other reasons. But the idea of student exchange program and how many things it will give the students apart from what you teach them in the classroom. This is very important. Everything cannot be taught in terms of textbooks and blackboards. There are certain things students have to imbibe when you show them the world. When you expose them to the world, then they understand. And student exchange program is one such. It can turn out to be one of your best practices under curricular aspects if you can do that. So you can start it at a humble level locally. And even a small thing as perceiving women dropouts. This is one of the challenges of this institution, especially in government colleges. So, especially coming, as I told you, more than 30% of the students come from tribal areas and backward regions, and they are the first generation learners. Usually, they think of getting their daughters married by maximum between 15 and 18. Even not even 18, much even earlier also. So as soon as they complete their 10+2, most of them get married. But if at all not, by the time they join the first year, before they complete the second year and go to final year, many of them get married. They use it to get married. But thanks to the motivation and thanks to the way we talked to the parents, thanks to the kind of, the health reasons and other social reasons, and finally, we were able to reduce the dropouts due to marriages. And there are other reasons also for dropouts. There is a committee for us which has actually explored into the reasons for dropouts. Maybe financial reasons, maybe social reasons like marriages, etc. And if you can really have one good practice by which women dropouts especially can be reduced to zero level, we have brought it to 2%. Earlier, it used to be around 6 to 7%, around 3-4 years back. And today, it is hardly 1.5 to 2%, I think. Let me confirm it from my IQAC. So that's how this institution is successful. And ask us the strategies, we have it documented. And training the UG students in personality development and communication is one of the important aspects of curricular aspects. Is one of the important best practice in curricular aspects. What is education unless it evolves your personality, unless it develops your communication skills? Therefore, keeping this in mind, apart from JKC, we have clubs. Almost all the departments are operating clubs. The English department has a club where students' personality and communication skills have been catered to. And as I told you, we have a finishing school training where there are 100 hours specially meant for personality development and communication skills. So this not only evolves their personality, but also helps them in their professional career if properly used. And sometimes we are inviting people from outside also, from their claimed institutions, to train our students in, mathematics, in what we call the numerical techniques, the simple numerical techniques, time-saving techniques, etc. We are inviting experts from outside to deliver lectures during the finishing school training. So all these things are curricular aspects. You may ask me, sir, suppose I do only student exchange program, can I claim it as a best practice? I told you, best practice is all pervading. If your institution needs to be evaluated, they touch your institution at various points, and if they could find best practices at all these points, then you are successful in implementing it. If you ask the two best practices which the institution from Government College Rajahmundry has quoted, I'll tell you. One is the student-centric methodology to achieve graduate attributes. This we have taken from teaching learning, no doubt. But teaching learning using technology, using student-centric methodology, using activities, reducing the TTT, what we call the teacher talk time. So what are the techniques we have implemented? We have successfully documented, we have videotaped, we have presented them to our NAC team, and that was one of our sample best practices. And apart from that, the second best practice which we have quoted is adopted villages, which I'm going to talk to you very shortly. And if you may ask me, sir, why did you select this topic? Though it doesn't fall under any of the 6 criteria. Of course, but let me tell you, it falls under all the 6 criteria, because the adopted 5 villages which we have chosen within the vicinity of 20 kilometers from Rajahmundry, they have become virtual platforms for showing our achievements in the institution. So everything that the department wants to show and prove, the villages have become beautiful grounds for implementing. So from curricular aspects, we have talked about it. And you can also introduce gender-related projects in your curriculum. What are gender-related projects? So we can give students projects on dowries. How many families or how many communities are addicted to this issue, or subjects or victims of dowry problem? How much dowry is being offered? How can this? How many victims are being recorded every year on account of this? And we can also talk about gender exploitation nowadays. So we have agriculture area around Rajahmundry, and gender exploitation, when women go for employment, especially in agriculture sector or as daily laborers, how are they exploited? Especially the women. And migrating women can also be a good topic under gender related topics when you are giving them projects. So remember, this is a cross-cutting issue which we're actually locating under curricular aspects. So gender related issues are cross-cutting issues which are no way, remember, be it economics or political science. Suppose a lecturer in economics gives a topic on a project on dowry or gender exploitation. Remember, he is actually using his economics as an occasion to explore into gender related social issue. So what NAC expects is, you need not separately introduce gender related aspects as part of your curriculum, but at least when you are giving them projects, let them feel the social issues. Let them use your education and apply the tools of education to find solutions to the social issues. This is very, very important. So that is one way you can focus what you are doing. Migrating women. You see, villages and villages today under the threat of urbanization. Today, the rural employment is gone, and maybe computerization or mechanization. There was a time when women used to be busy during the harvest time, but today unemployment problem is peeping into their faces, especially after the harvesting machines have started figuring out in every village. So in this way, the mechanization also has its own evils. And what are the solutions you should be able to? You should make your students feel the pinch of it. This is something happening around them, but very few people have really taken the data, taken the digits and prepared it. And celebrating national festivals is one way of creating national awareness. And those people who really want to understand what is celebrating national festivals, come to this institution and see how we celebrate Republic Day. The Republic Day in this institution is celebrated almost along the lines it is celebrated at the state head capitals or country head capital. You can see that. You can see every department, rallying in front of the dignitaries on the stage, showing their year-long achievements. You can see NCC, giving a wonderful parade, a kind of spectacular parade that you see. And it's done in a proud way, in a meticulous way. And the principal is no less than a chief minister or the prime minister of the country taking the guard of honor from the NCC. And it's a great festival. and there is a lot of joy, festivity, celebration, skills, everything is displayed. Even there is a lot of song, dance, and everything there, right? Yes. And we have seasonal and local festivals also being celebrated. We have celebrated recently Sankranti Sambaralu. As part of it, even the forgotten things, once again, let me remind you that this is one way of integrating the ancient values. Kite flying was one of the competitions conducted in this college during Sankranti festivals. And Rangoli, singing, dancing, campfires, and whatnot. It was recreated. The entire scene was recreated and made the students really enjoy. Even fancy dressing, right? Cultural dressing, apart from fancy dressing. So these things, even all these things come under celebrating national festivals. Not only national festivals, even every festival has its own significance, and that should be brought to the notice. Celebration festivals is not just eating, meeting, and partying. It is making students understand the significance of it. An enhancement of curricular options is another important thing under curricular aspects. I told you, one of the best practices. How can you introduce a best practice in curriculum? We can say enhancement of curricular options. Today we have choice-based credit system, where when the student comes to the 6th semester, he has to choose paper 7 and then paper 8, 9, 10, where huge world of choices are given to the students. Apart from this college offers 21 certificate courses which are made mandatory for all the first year students. This is a kind of value addition of studying in this college. Certificate courses in many colleges were optional, but in this institution, thanks to the best efforts of our head, we have made certificate courses a part of curriculum, which is compulsory. And we have BWOC courses here. And apart from that, if you look at this institution, we have around 25 restructured courses and around 4 honors courses and around 6 BWOCs and 3 BBAs. In other words, we have altogether 52 different programs, and most of them, more than 50% of them are restructured. They are restructured keeping the needs of the students in mind, keeping the needs of the market in mind, keeping the demands of the stakeholders and the industry, because we want to design this institution or evolve this institution into employer's choice. The word employer's choice is possible only. Employers do not come easily. We have to convince them with what we are teaching, how our graduates are evolving. And that is the reason why we have done away with some of the so-called traditional courses, which today have almost become outdated, but still hanging on the course programs of many institutions. We have done away with them, and we have introduced new courses and restructured courses and new certificate courses and BWOCs and BBAs, etc. And we have integrated certain programs. Integrated programs. We were thinking about it. We were planning to start a 5-year integrated program with public policy. It's on the anvil, and we are likely to introduce it. We have honors programs, as I told you, and we have tie-up with many universities abroad. That's also a very important point. Not only with universities within the country, even universities abroad also. This institution has a tie-up with a university, for example, Central University, Hyderabad, right? And we have a tie-up with, for example, the Zhejiang University in China. And one of our faculty members has done his research in renewable energy at the University of Corn, Lewis Valley, USA. And that university is kind enough to extend permission to some of our students to have a tie-up. And very shortly, we are going to send a batch of our students there who are willing to prosecute their post-graduation there. So, to have a tie-up with universities like BARC, we have a tie-up with BARC. So, it's not an ordinary institution. And these students periodically are being selected for their summer research. From the physics department, we have already deputed a batch of students for summer research. So what are all these things? So in other words, teaching, learning or curricular aspect is not just what you offer at your institution. You are facilitating the enhancement of learning by having tie-up with other universities, like extension centers of universities. So everything, it's too ambitious nowadays to have everything within our fold. But best may be available somewhere. Recognize it and extend it to our students. And that is also very, very important. So we have a tie-up with a couple of universities abroad, and nationally we have more than 130 MOUs with industry and institutions of excellence. So this is one way, as I told you, you may ask me, how did you get A plus? We have got A plus because we have shown excellence. We have shown the best in every aspect. And now I told you, I'd like to give you a brief coverage of what all we talked about
Yes, you are audible. You are audible. You can give your presentation.
Okay. Now, please allow me to share my content.
Yes, it is allowed.
Sir, is it visible now?
Yes,
Am I audible?
yes, audible, visible. Continue.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. First, I congratulate the Government College Rajahmundry Autonomous for securing A plus grade, the highest in CGPA in entire India in terms of government degree colleges. I once again congratulate the leader of the team, the principal, Dr. David Kumar Garu, RJD Zone 1 and Zone 2, and his team also for their valuable contribution in getting this very important accreditation. So, as I watched the lengthy lecture of Dr. Srishal Sastri garu, really a wonderful presentation, sir. You dwelt upon so many things. Uh, to some extent, I would like to deal with this benchmarking of this best practice also. Usually, the NAC has 5 core values. That is, contribution to national development is very important core value. And fostering global competencies among students, the second core value of NAC. And inculcating value system in students, the third core value of NAC. The promoting the use of technology and quest for excellence. These are the 5 core values of NAC, and all the benchmarks or the benchmarking will be evolved around these 5 core values. Before going to explain more the benchmarking and different criteria, I would like to develop on the education quality. As per Harvard Knight classification of education quality, the quality is exceptional, the quality is perfection, the quality is fitness for purpose, the quality is value for money, and quality as transformation. He deal upon the quality as exceptional is exceptionally high standards for academic achievement. If any institution or higher education institution, if it evolved or if it achieved academic achievement exceptionally well, that can be graded as A plus plus or A plus institution. And there must be focus on processes and their specifications and is related to zero defects and quality in culture. Here I would like to stress upon the zero defect. So it is like a sigma 9. So the humanly it is impossible, but we try our best to go for a zero defect processes. And as a quality as a fitness for purpose, it judges the quality of student or service in terms of the extent to which its stated purpose defined as meeting customer specifications or conformity with the institutional mission is met. The quality has value for money. Assess quality in terms of return on investment or expenditure and is related to accountability. So accountability is a very important core area here. And finally, the quality as transformation. Your institution must transform and it define the quality as a process of perceivable quality change with emphasis on adding value to students and empowering them. So these are different education quality aspects as defined by Harvey and Knight in 1996. So I briefly explain different criteria to 1 to curricular aspect 7. So this is actually the I would like to deal mainly upon the benchmarks of different aspects. I divided into 3 categories, subcategories. One is the criterion statements. The criterion statements is generally asked in your QNM and QLM, that is qualitative and quantitative metrics. And the assessment indicators, the center one is assessment indicator. These are actually called as probes. Actually, the NACP team or the QNM will probe your institution how you are going to document your benchmarks. So the writing part of your documentation or the QNM, the entering your data, will have to give a benchmark for each criteria. For example, a statement called as a clearly stated goal, that is in criteria 1. So he will probe for your mission and goals. The mission goals should conform with the curricular learning centers with experimental or experiential learning process between 70 to 100%. If you reach or if you achieve 75 to 100%, it is a benchmark. It is a benchmark. Any institution can be achieved A++ grade if you reach this benchmark. And like this, the program consistent with goals and objectives. Your program should be consistent. The probe is like this. That is assessment indicator will be like this. The program compatibility with the mission goals. Yes, assessment of students is needed, very much needed. A wide range of program offerings for academic flexibility. That is curriculum alignment with the goals and objectives. That is percentage of interdisciplinary courses introduced. That should be at more than 10% for each department or each program. And feedback that is very important from academic peers, students, employers, and practices of sustainable curricular practices to achieve academic excellence. So the probe will be like this: the curriculum development process, that is course structure, CBCS, skill-based, value-based programs on intellectual diversity. So we all introduce the CBCS, that is 100%. So major syllabus revision must be between 75 to 100%, that is a benchmark. And syllabus relevance to local needs must be above 50%, that is another benchmark. And curriculum development to global needs, that is more than 75%. And employability will be also more than 75%. These are the benchmarks. Apart from this, under the curricular aspects, the emerging areas in environment and IT entrepreneurship, innovation, it should be more than 50%. So the last box, I am dealing with the benchmarking of each criteria. So if any institution, any higher education institution evolves this type of benchmarks, it will be excellent benchmarking. And you have to devise this benchmark in your AQR. AQR is another important aspect that must benchmark the AQR, right? Coming to teaching, learning, evaluation. As I have given only 10 minutes, I would like to skip many slides. And this is again criterion statements and assessment indicators. Assessment indicators are nothing but probes where the NACP team will probe your institution like this. Whether wide publicity and transparency in the admission process. But for that, you have your benchmark must be 100% transparency in the admission process. Whether it caters to access and equity considering the applicable norms, it must be 100% equitable and accessible also. And enhanced technology and enhanced learning, you must be experiential methodology, 100% MOOCs, Kahoot, clickers, and of course the different pedagogical methods you have to display and you have to document it very elaborately. Whether you are having any appropriate strategies for advanced learners, slow learners, caters to the needs of etc. So it must document very precisely. The documentation is very important part. It is the heart and soul of any assessment. And teacher-student ratio must be ideally 15:2. And there must be career counseling, remedial coaching. Of course, many of our institutions are doing this, but documentation is very poor. No, I stress upon that. You have to document very keenly. And the experiential learning by 100%, that is use of pedagogical methodologies, ICT, and innovative technologies, RBPT model, everything you have to document in your QLM also. So use of educational technology must be 100%. That means every teacher have to use the educational technology. And this is a COVID period and post-COVID period, every assessment that whether it is NRF or NAC, they are expected 100% hands-on use of technology, education technology. So here I would like to show in a graphical method that is instruct very important. That is the teacher quality is very important for scoring maximum marks in the criteria 2, that is teaching, learning, and evaluation. And after that, after intersection, the teacher's response and student's response must be captured. That is a feedback system. If there is no feedback system is there, it will. Those feedback system is very important. Benchmark teaching, learning. Coming to the research and innovation, many of our institutions are failing in this aspect. But please, I request all the institutions now, other than autonomous colleges, please focus on the extension activity. Here you have to gain easily. That is the probe is like the seed money for research facilities and promotion of research culture. Yes, you have to drop a guideline or a policy for your institution. You have to give some seed money and you have to write that seed money is yes and facilities available yes and research culture is there yes and you have to document everything in your research policy, and you have to for collaboration with industry and NGOs and other neighboring institutions also, even the university. It is called as a collaborating backward collaboration and the forward collaboration also. With universities, it is a forward collaboration. With the schools, it is a backward collaboration. And you have to mentor the school children also. It is another extension activity. So faculty recognition for guiding the students, research committee, research center. Yes, most of our institutions are having all these committees. Yeah, you have to write. And apart from this, the percentage of faculty actively involved in research, it should be more than 10% for each. If it is a major department, please see that every your faculty at least publish 2 papers for every year. It is a must. And of research projects, it is a big department. For example, 10 to 15 departments are there. At least you have to see that every department has one project, whether it is UGC, DST, or DBT, or any other project. So it is a benchmark. It is a benchmark. And research grants for department. Each department, please, each department must have 2 lakhs rupees research grant. It is a benchmark again. So yeah, as many as departments, at least 10 departments has to have. Every teacher has to publish at least 2 research papers per year. It is another benchmark. And percentage of teachers in patents or honors must be nearly 5%. If you have 100 teachers, at least 5% having patents is not a issue nowadays. At least you have to arrange IPR, and you have to arrange intellectual property rights. You have to arrange seminars on draft how to make a patent, how to apply a patent. Like this will enable your institutions. And you should have at least 5 MOUs with the industry also. It is a research and innovation. You can easily gain a benchmark score here. And finally, the revenue generation, there must be consultancy. For example, a college like Rajahmundry, a college like Kakinada, or a college which is located in the coastal area, a geology department and botany department can have a consultation. And under the to get something recorded for your income also. This consultancy must be generating at least 1 lakh for each department. Likewise, the number of students faculty participated in extension services. So this area is very important. Many, but there is no proper document. So please see that at least 70 to 100% extension activities must be documented from each of. So in this connection, you can easily score the benchmarking in research and innovation, that is criteria 3 also. So community need-based extension programs must be there. More than 5 community need-based action programs must be there. There is another benchmark under the criteria 3. Coming to the infrastructure and learning resources, it is very important aspect, and you can score easily. Many of our colleges are benefited out of ROSA funds. So today we have most of the colleges we have per student is 110 square meters per student, and built-up area per student is 11 square meters per student. Most of our colleges, government degree colleges, are having this. Even aided colleges also having all these facilities. We have to document it. And for physical infrastructure, there is adequate and excellent physical infrastructure is there, thanks to ROSA for providing ample funds. Nearly most of the colleges, they are gaining adequate infrastructure from UGC and from ROSA also. You have to document it. And utilization of classrooms must be more than 75 classrooms utilization must be there. And computer availability to students must be 1:10. So it is a benchmark. So when Dr. QA, you must write that if the computer availability to students must be 1:10. Otherwise, you see that the computer availability for students must be 1:10. So number of maintenance of staff relations to support staff is 1:4. That is in the library services. And budget must be more than 4% allocated, and there must be AMC for computer facilities. And the sophisticated estimates procured from time to time must be documented and recorded. Maintained utilization rate must be more than 50%. Number of books, number of students must be 10 to 15. That is total number of books. Minimum for each year. So most of the top colleges, they are spending more than 5 lakhs. So here it is a benchmark. But you have to document it properly. You have to document, and the documentation must be very beautifully documented, particularly in terms of the qualitative metrics. And number must 100 see that the high-speed internet facility and end-to-end user must be 100% of the students as well as staff. There is benchmarking regarding the infrastructure. Coming to the criteria 5, that is student support progression. Here, every college, particularly the government college, can score more marks because we are doing our level best under this. That is, pass percentage. Most of the autonomous college, it is more than 80%. It is the benchmark, and dropout rate is many colleges it is less than 10%. It is another benchmark, and progression must be 40%, more than 40% for higher studies. That is, the student progression must be in higher studies. Student progression must be in employment and entrepreneurship. So placement must be above 75%. If it is 100%, is well and good. And entrepreneurship must be between 20 to 40% must be entrepreneurship. This is the benchmark. So the demand ratio must be 1:20, and the percentage of female students must be at least 50. That also shows the gross parity index, the gender parity index, that must be at least 50% if it is a co-education. And the student participation in games and sports, if it is local, it is more than 5%. National level, if it is state level, it must be above 10%, and it is international level, it is above 1%. So these are the benchmarks, and there must be tutor award system. The percentage of students getting funds must be more than 10%. It may be free ships, it may be scholarships from government. So every our government college suits all these criteria and easily can get the benchmark score in criteria 5 also. And coming to governance and leadership and management. Again, for government colleges, of course, and aided colleges, this is also very important criteria to get high score metrics. For example, the functions of the institutions and its academic and administrative units are governed by the principles of the participation and its transparency. Yes, the probe is like this: the vision, mission, and objectives in line with the objectives of higher education institutions. Yes, we are motivational initiatives fully exploited under the leadership of the principals. And academic and administrative planning in institution move hand in hand. That is demonstration of effective leadership in institutional governance. There is a transparency of operations and effective financial management that must be documented, and your document also must be very transparent. The institution practices the relevant welfare schemes for its all constituents. Yes, the effective functioning of the grievance redressal cell, the perspectives and strategic plan must be there. Self-appraisal of the staff also, and decentralization of governance, delegation of powers, a willingness for reforms. These are all benchmarks under governance, leadership, and management and criteria 6. Coming to the last part, that is institutional values. The institutional displays is sensitive to the changing educational, social, and market demands. Institution is sensitive to ensure gender equality. The probe will be like this: no, a number of gender equity promotion programs. Yes, the institution displays changing educational and social market demands. Institution is sensitive to end gender equity, right? So your benchmark must be like a statement. You have to write a good document here. And if there is another probe is like this: alternate energy initiatives. That is, persons of lighting power requirements using LED bulbs, waste management practices, rainwater harvesting practices, green practices, facilities for differently abled persons, and inclusiveness. Yes, you have to write like this. It focuses on environmental consciousness and sustainability. The institution preserves its institutional distinctiveness in terms of quality and excellence. The institution is geared to promote an ambience of creativity, innovation, and improving quality. The institution promotes inclusive practice for social justice and better stakeholder relationships, right? So almost every government or aided institution is meeting all these institutional values. Another is the programs for creating awareness about universal values, maintenance transparency, financial, academic, and administrative function. Yes, we are doing that. The institution promotes value-based education for inculcating social responsibilities and good citizenry among its student community. Like this, you have to draft your document regarding the QLM also. So the very crux of the problem many colleges are encountering is whether what has to be taken as institutional value, what has to be taken as a best practice. I think at length, Dr. Srisali Sastry Garu dwelt upon this best practice. Of course, I would like to differentiate between the best practice and institutional practice, distinctiveness of the institution. So here, the institutional values are like this. The values are at the institution since their establishment and remain an essential tool in dealing with challenges and offering by higher education institutions. That means it must be from the foundation stage, it must be concrete, it must be institutionalized, it must be strongly believed by the community also, other than your parents, other than your students. Even community has to believe that values. That is, best practice of specific characteristics. There are important predictors of its success and is a marker for widespread acceptance by the stakeholders. Distinctiveness refers to those activities and qualities and accomplishments that establish or enable the higher education institution to enjoy a unique identity or reputation for which it is known, admired, valued, and naturally it has two dimensions. One is the vertical distinctiveness, another one is the horizontal distinctiveness. Vertical distinctiveness, it may be a result when an individual or a group of individuals accomplish something that is highly valued by both external and internal audiences. That means the best practice of higher education institution can be developed through benchmarking and by adopting it from another institution can be or modifying it suitably to the higher education institutions. And another one is horizontal distinctiveness. It occurs when something noteworthy happens across multiple programs, units, or whole of higher education institution, and that can be identified and established. So you have to, your institution, your team has to identify, your student has to identify, your community has to identify the best practices that has to disseminate, that has to practice, that has to sustainable, and it has to be the sustainable steps to follow. So these institutional values and best practices. So here you have two categories. One is vertical distinctiveness, another one is horizontal distinctiveness. So these are different benchmarks regarding the different criteria, 7 criteria. With this, I would like to end my session, sir. Any queries? I'm ready to answer. I request all the participants.
Thank you very much, sir, for
vertical and distinct. Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving us the benchmarks for all the criteria. Now, I request all the participants to participate in a poll, which will take 2 to 3 minutes. We'll pose the questions on the screen. So, all the participants, please answer the questions, which will enable us to improve ourselves in the next webinars. So, now I request Mr. Sunil to present the questions on the screen. So, all the participants are requested to answer the questions.
Okay.
ఇది చెక్ చేస్తాం సార్, ఇది ఎర్ర వచ్చింది కదండి మధ్యలోనే, ఒకసారి చూసి లేదంటే కొత్తది ఇస్తాం.
So all the participants are requested to note that the next session will start sharp at 2:30, and please check your website WhatsApp group and your mails for the new link to join the session. So those who have completed the poll can exit the session and request to join at 2:30 sharp.